Rob here. Damn, it's been hot out there. Hope you've been staying hydrated in these dog days of summer. Now, conversation 63 brings me in frame with lifelong New Yorker, venture capitalist, and the reason he's on this episode, the founder, singer, songwriter of the Gideon King City Blog band, Gideon King. Not only do we wax poetics musically, we speak New York, a bit of economics, and also balancing making a living while building a second career as a musician. Of course, we end with asking, what's next? As we all must ask ourselves now and then. And oh yeah, check out his new single, Desert in the Sun, found at www.gideonkingcityblog.com. So please enjoy this wonderfully engaging conversation. RL. And of course, again, music by Walter ETC and video produced by artist Kevin Gilmore. Thank you. Well, Gideon King, thank you for joining me on Uncontaminated Sound.
Pleasure to be here.
I guess my first question is, I notice your diverse backgrounds in, with business and then now, we're here, of course, to talk about your music and stuff. Just curious, what did you always have a musical passion? When you were a child, and can you talk about how you developed your interest in music while studying other or pursuing other pursuits, I guess?
Sure. I mean, I grew up in a pretty musical family. My brother was an amazing prodigy jazz musician, so I grew up hearing him working out all kinds of jazz lines and figuring out the jazz world from Chick Corea to McCoy Tyner and Herbie Hancock and all the great horn players, Wayne Shorter and Meat Lux Lewis and Fats Waller. And so, yeah, I mean, I grew up hearing music every day. So he's 5 years older than I am. So by the time I was 5 and conscious enough to even listen to music, all kinds of different things were being pounded into my head, jazz and classical from my parents and my sisters who were listening to folk music and Neil Young and Joni Mitchell and things of that nature. And so I picked up an acoustic guitar, a broken down old acoustic guitar when I was 9 or 10 and just started fiddling. And because my brother was playing jazz, I really started playing little chromatic lines, really. And I think I was fortunate enough to hear a great musician working it out at a very, very young age. And so in doing that, I think it opened my mind up to a certain complexity and opened my mind up to various types of music that just never would have happened had I not been lucky enough to have been around a musical family. And then, just developed a lifelong love affair with the 6-string guitar and even sometimes the 12-string guitar and sometimes other kinds of guitars. And it's a love affair that will not, it's a stubborn love affair. It will not be extinguished. So played in bands, of course, in college, took a lot of lessons from jazz guys, but also I would say I'm mostly self-taught and always wrote songs and then decided to get serious about it 7 or 8 years ago and formed Gideon King City Blog. And, always did that, but also had a fascination with as not cool as it sounds, because I don't want to sound like a dirty capitalist, 1%er or whatever they call anybody who's in business these days. Love business and love building things, and business is about building things and trying things and learning new things, and love carpentry and love basketball and love tennis, and so I suppose I'm possessed in a multitude of ways. Not always pleasant for my family around me, but certainly engaging.
Now, did you grow up around the New York area, or
Yeah.
are you a transplant?
No, I'm a born and bred New York City animal.
Cool.
I'll probably die here, unless I've already died here. I don't know. Maybe I have. I can't tell yet. But so yeah. No, I was born here, raised here. This place is in my blood. I write songs about it. I love to go to other places, and I do hate New York as much as I love it. But I guess I would say I love it 51% and I hate it 49%. But that 2% gap keeps me here. You know.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that sounds about correct. Well, though I've had a harder time. I'm a Boston native and transplanted to New York, and New York initially has given me some hard times. You know, it's like
When did you when did you move to New York?
Late 2016, like November 2016.
So you came here, and then 2 years later, the entire city was shut down for 2 years.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, I came with more of a design mind. Like I was in tech in Boston, actually,
Oh, cool.
kind of fintech stuff, talking about investments. And on a whim, like after a contract, I was like, Boston's kind of getting small. I need to see the bigger piece of the world, and of course, New York City is that slice of the world. So kind of on a whim, picked up and moved to Brooklyn, and actually, I met some guys in the camera work and found my medium, I guess, was lens work. And I met my current partner, who is a music publicist, noticed my street photography in 2017, pushed it out to Pace magazine, and I was often running, just documenting musicians of all types, you know. And then I got backstage and started my own series, and I've been doing this. Like I haven't gone into a tech job in probably since 2018. You know.
Wow, so, good for you. Well, we're supposed to do a photo shoot on February 3rd. If you want to come and be the photographer, but I suppose we can talk about that offline.
Of course, yeah, no, that would be great. And actually, though, I did kind of quite like finance questions, but not regarding just the business sense. But actually, I think it's really critical. Just talking about artists and their perception of money, right? In capitalism. I recently was at a NIFA workshop called Artists as Entrepreneur, and most of the artists, the fine artists, visual artists, really didn't have a concept of how to build a business and really make a living from their art, you know. And I guess my question to you is, has your business experience really helped propel your musical or helped
but in a way,
musical craft, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, yes. To be honest, let's sort of go from the something a bit shallow to something that I think is more meaningful and more sort of instructive, if you want to put it that way. For sure, in building businesses, there's a logistical and organizational dynamic that needs to take place so that brick by brick you can build something of some value. And I think the same thing goes for music. Dealing with managers, slowly getting to form relationships with venues, understanding the ecosystem, and failing and succeeding, but always being persistent, and not hanging your head too low when things don't go your way. So I think the dogged, almost monomaniacal persistence required to build a successful business of any kind, whether it's a pizza place or a multinational tech conglomerate, requires unbelievable, almost obsessive persistence. But I think to be very successful and to build any business well, you really have to check your ego at the door. And if you're unwilling to hire and take, even if you're the boss, and if you're unwilling to hire and take direction from those above you, those to the side of you, and those below you, and if you're unwilling to integrate the ideas of others into your forward motion, I should say your motion, then you won't have any forward motion if you don't do that. So I guess what I would say is that as I believe, shamelessly promoting my own music here, as I believe our music has improved over time. I think one of the primary reasons for that is I do think I've improved as a writer, a player, a songwriter, but I actually think letting the ideas of others in through the back door of my own ego was the smartest thing that I've done. I have an incredible group of musicians that surround me. Their suggestions are not only welcome, but coveted. I embrace those suggestions. I embrace the chaos that ensues when the way I envision a song isn't the way that it comes out or the way that it gets produced. So I would say that the best business people I know are actually truly open-minded. Now, the number of people that say, well, I have an open mind, I don't have a monopoly on good ideas, you know, that is in the billions of people who say that but are full of shit and don't mean it. So I think if somehow one can truly integrate the ideas of other really talented people and not be fearful of hiring people who are better than they are. For example, I believe everyone in my band is probably a better musician than I am. And I treasure that inferiority because I think that inferiority is sort of, it has, you know, sort of, it's an asset. My inferiority is an asset if I want to be sort of glib about it. So man, that's the first thing I would say is that translates, or that is a common thread between running a business and building a band is respect those that have skills, be smart enough to use their skills, and be smart enough to keep smart people, and be smart enough to treat them as the talents that they are. So that's one huge thing. And the other thing is just the organizational dynamics and the persistence. Just the sheer persistence, because the music business stinks, right?
Yeah,
you put a song out, it floats into the ether, and it sort of dissolves into nothingness, unless you're somehow, you know, have some gigantic hit and you're packing stadiums of 8,000 people. But the rest of us, mere mortals, are toiling in the land of, you know, sort of relative anonymity all the time. And so you just got to keep at it, and you have to avoid actionable frustration. Frustration, you know, throwing your guitar across the room every once in a while, I think, is healthy. You know, but actionable frustration, meaning not continuing on, or allowing it to eclipse your creative efforts. That's sort of self-defeating and not cool.
Yeah. But it sounds like also too, like, going back more to like an innovation model. I mean, with music or art in general, you actually get immediate feedback from the market, i.e. market, right? If it's bad song, it's a bad image, people will tell you, or most people, maybe your family, oh, it's great, but you'll get that immediate feedback. But I think that's an opportunity to go back and have that post-mortem of like, what can I improve? Why didn't people like it, you know?
It's funny you say that. When I first hired a manager for the band, he's a smart guy, and he's a good guy. And I've learned to read his signals and his subliminal criticisms well. And when I was first putting out music, he liked it okay. And the music was cool. It was very complex and very harmonically complex. But when I really listened to what he was saying, he was sort of saying like, hey man, it might be cool to you and a few people, but most people are going to think it's really weird and not like it.
Yeah.
And I think his expression was kind of weird. So I can only imagine what he wasn't saying. If he was saying it's kind of weird, imagine what he was really thinking. And so instead of saying, hey, go to hell, you don't understand my art, I'll hire a new manager, what I did is I tried to make it not kind of weird. And that doesn't mean a slavish conformity that takes away your individual nature as an artist or as anything, but certainly try and make it so that it's relatable. I mean, the idea of a piece of music is to actually move some air around and have people connect to it in one way, shape, or form. That doesn't mean it can't be abstract, or that doesn't mean that it can't be abstruse in certain ways, but shit, you know, people are supposed to like it.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, so basically my manager was like, I really don't know if anybody's going to like this. And so I sort of had a fork in the road. Like, I could say like, hey, get lost. I'll find someone who understands my art, like a child. Or I could say, let me work to reach him and to reach the other people who he thinks I'm not reaching. And so we did. And I think we're really beginning to do that. We're getting more streams, more tractions. We're playing bigger venues. And, you know, it's coming around, you know, it's coming around.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, that's a critical point, though. I mean, it's a unique business in art. You know, art is a unique business because, or any medium, generally you have to create your own consumer base. You know, you have to create your own fan base. And it's like, and that's what I think a lot of artists don't understand. It's like, if you're creating art for yourself, that's one thing, right? But if you're trying to actually make a living, you do have to aggressively, you know, find out who your target market is, and then go and make, you know, if you have a fan base that likes weird stuff, then you can make weird stuff. But if nobody's into it, you do have to adapt, right? Or not do it anymore. But
and you know, I didn't know how to adapt. It took a long time, and now I think I have. We're writing stuff that I think is really interesting and also more commercial. But you know, it doesn't mean everybody will like it, and certainly Taylor Swift fans are not going to be listening to it, and certainly you know, probably Post Malone's fans are not going to be listening to it. But other people's fans certainly will be, and are.
Yeah. Well, can you talk to me a bit about, like, how did you evolve your skills, I guess? Because it seems like you know, a good portion of your career has been building investments firms and your own companies. Did you have time to at the time? Were you still practicing the guitar, or?
Yeah. So I always had a guitar in my hand, and one day I sort of picked it up again after, I won't say abandoning it completely, but largely neglecting, to the point, let me put it this way: when you don't have calluses on your fingers, you're not playing much guitar.
Yeah.
And I went for a number of years when I didn't have calluses on my fingers. I was picking my guitar up and playing some sort of unproductive doodling bullshit, but I didn't develop any calluses, and I wasn't really doing any exercises or expanding my knowledge of the grid of the fretboard of the guitar. And so I sort of went to a friend of my brother's who's a wonderful jazz guitar player. And again, I sort of sat with him, and he sort of said, like, you don't, you know, this was a long time ago, but he said, you know, he sort of said to me, you don't really know shit. And he said, you know, you're sort of, you're doodling around, and it's fine if you want to just be another rock guitar player. I think those were his exact words, actually. And not that there's anything wrong with it. There's some amazing rock guitar players, obviously, but he was sort of saying, like, if you want to call yourself a musician or a guitar player, you really ought to know something. And so that was difficult to hear, but it sent me down a path of really studying the modes and sort of putting myself through a quiet, private Berklee School of Music by virtue of the internet and reading and so on. And so, of course, I learned the modes and you know, and expanded from there, and watched old John Scofield videos on harmonizing scales and so on. And I would say, just like in business, man, if you have a solid connection with the basics, you can go a long way. And it's true in business too. You don't need to be an intellect. You don't need to be an expert on cost curves, okay, to decide to build a company. And you don't need to be the most theoretically, you don't need to be the most theoretically sophisticated human being to make good music, but you should. But it's nice if you know the basics.
Yeah.
And so between my brother and between my brother's friend, I really hunkered down and got into the basics. And I think that Prince once said it, actually, in an interview. God, I don't know. I think it was like some old Dick Cavett interview or something. And Dick Cavett said, like, what would you say to aspiring musicians? And instead of some cliched crap like be yourself, or make sure to be true to your own artistic inclinations, or some bullshit that everybody says on Instagram. Prince said, well, it'd be nice if you knew what a chord was, and knew what a G major 7 is and a G minor 7, and if you knew what Ionian was instead of Dorian. And it was just like, here was Prince, who looked so out there and cool and crazy, basically saying like, whatever I look like, but I know the basics. And so that was the thing. I really embraced the basics. And when you embrace the basics, it's incredible how far you can take the basics. And to me, in anything you do, whether it's woodworking or shooting a jump shot in basketball, or I don't know, anything, writing a story, fiction, whatever.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's like without the foundations, you can't advance, right? If you don't know the elements.
There are these anomalous folks who get by at an incredibly high level musically, who have no technical training or haven't trained themselves at all technically. But that's for most, that's a pipe dream.
Yeah.
And I would put myself in the category of foremost, not as in foremost, but for space most, right?
Now, when was the moment you decided to really kick off like the Gideon King and City Blog project, or start your own, like start recording, I guess, or?
I was getting drunk at a hotel, and there was a singer-songwriter named Saul Rivers at the hotel, and he had really good feel, and the way he strummed his guitar and played chords was really rhythmic and really organic. And he was singing some of his own songs. And I think I was drinking sake, and I was quite drunk. And my wife said, why don't you write some songs? And I sort of said, well, I've written a lot of songs, blah, blah. She said, no, write songs, beginning to end, actually do it. And so that triggered some kind of obsessive reaction, where I started writing songs. And then I started playing live with that guy a lot. We had a little act that we went around town, played with. And then I just became like some kind of obsessive songwriting maniac, just writing songs left and right, and bringing other musicians in, amazing jazz musicians to be part of it. And I had always written jazz-oriented or fusion-oriented compositions, with songs with lyrics. That was really the moment. That was the sort of tiny, the inception of this thing at a molecular level, if you want to put it that way, be pretentious about it. But that was the atomic beginning of it, if you want to say it that way.
And now, just kind of generalized question, I guess. Like, growing up in the city, were you going to venues and checking out live performances?
Yes.
Kind of backwards,
yes.
But
even when I was working in business, I would come home very often at 9, and then go out at 10 and just sit at a club and have like a Caesar salad or something, and go down to the 55 bar and check Mike Stern out, go up to they used to call it Augie's, but Smoke, and hear all kinds of musicians play. I'd go to Mesro and Smalls and hear my bro play. And yes, I love live music in small venues. I really love it. You can really hear the music. I can't say I love live music in huge venues quite as much, although I do. But there is nothing like hearing someone work on their stuff in a small venue. So yes, I absolutely spent a lot of time doing that. A lot of time alone doing it. Sometimes I'd go with friends, although to be honest, I prefer to go alone and eat my French onion soup alone, and my hamburger alone, while I listen to whoever is doing their thing. And that's a great way to learn, and it's a great way to observe the musical tics of great musicians,
Oh yeah, no, I was actually last week. I was at the do you know the Django? And
of course. Many of my band members play at the Django all the time.
Oh wow. Yeah, it was it's the first time I went there. I've been to the hotel before, and I think I've seen performances in the main lobby, but I haven't been into the downstairs venue, the Django, and it was lovely. Just the arched, kind of intimate, the arched roofs, and it was just like really jazz club, you know? It's like,
Yeah. Well, a lot of the people in my band play at the Django all the time.
And actually, I was going to ask you, like, how did you actually link up, or how do you find your talent? I guess, like, you don't need to, like, I guess, how did you link up with the current band?
Yeah, the current band has been together for a while. You know, one of the guys that I played with when I was doing that singer-songwriter thing with that other guy was a drummer named Jake Golbass, and he knows everyone in New York City and everyone in the music space. And I had started by sort of doing this rotational thing of all these different jazz musicians, but in due course, I really wanted to sort of have a more concretized version of the band with a more set group of musicians. So I sort of said, Jake, like, find people who can hang at any level, who can play jazz, who can play rock, who can play soul. I mean, find some serious musicians who are not assholes. And we were able to find a bunch of musicians, and we weeded out the assholes, and that's what we are, and that's what we have now. And so it's just a really lovely group of friendly, nice people who really love music and are really, really great musicians. I mean, our keyboard player is a wonderful jazz piano player, wonderful classical musician, has a great pop sensibility. One of our, I mean, it's just some of them have substantial solo careers themselves. But that's how it happened. And as time goes on, we've grown closer and closer. And while I write most of the music and lyrics, actually, we do also get together and write songs collectively sometimes. So a lovely group of people, open-minded, happy to laugh at me and happy to be laughed at by me and happy to laugh at each other, which is, as far as I'm concerned, the key to a friendship for me is being able to laugh at the person and have the person be able to laugh at you and sort of laugh at ourselves in general. And that's as serious as we are and as intense as we are, man, we laugh a lot,
Yeah. Now, have you during the like pandemic days, have you guys been able to perform live often? Or I've spoken to so many musicians where trying to book tours, or they've been canceled 3 times, and they're like, we just have to perform hyper locally, I guess. But
totally. I mean, yes, we've done shows recently during the very darkest periods of the pandemic. We didn't perform live, just like everybody else. But the one thing we did do is we went out to a studio in the woods, and we multiple times a month met and honestly created what music I'm very proud of. All music that is yet to be released, but will be released in the next year and a half. And man, we concluded that just because there was a pandemic and no one was playing in clubs didn't mean that we weren't compelled to write some music and create some music. In fact, in a time when there was nothing to do anywhere, there was almost no excuse not to find something to concentrate on heavily. So we concentrated very heavily on the studio process. And that was awesome. We came out, I mean, really great stuff came out of it. And I really think in many ways during the pandemic, we found our sound. Other than that, it was a miserable period, obviously, as I don't need to tell you that, but it was a miserable period. But that was a sort of a shining light during that period, getting together and making music and so on.
Well, at the time, initially, like when, everything hit the fan and everybody tried to jump on Facebook live streams, and you're doing live streams. Did you do any live stream, or strictly kept in the studio?
I think we did like 1 or 2 things, but I have to tell you, like, I like doing live streams and it's cool, but the difficulty of music is energy. It's literally physics says that it's energy. And so live streams it is so difficult in a live stream to transmit that electrical current out to people. There's still this sort of filtration of cameras, and it flattens the whole thing. It makes it spiritually 2-dimensional, not 3-dimensional. And if I'm being completely honest, while I appreciate the efforts of so many people that did so many live streams, I found them profoundly boring and not very engaging. And I think everyone else did too, or otherwise we'd all be still doing them, wouldn't we?
Yeah.
So they were sort of like, I decided not to concentrate on that much, but to try and produce music.
Yeah.
And because the energy, the lack of energy in live streams is really hard to swallow.
Mm. Oh yeah, no, I totally agree. You know, it's like, oh, and then you get you know, being on the web, you just get distracted and you're like, you exit out and yeah, and then, you know, the web was oversaturated with them, you know, it's like, how do you stand out in an oversaturated market actually?
Right, right,
And,
right. And there were some live streams that were okay and that were fun. Some of the DJ ones were good because they were just sort of pumping music out, and they were in a sense, it was sort of truest to the form of what they are in a way, and some of those were cool. I know D Nice did a whole bunch of live streams, and they were actually pretty cool, actually. And so, but man, I couldn't relate to the live stream thing. I maybe I'm just closed-minded or something, but I thought it sucked.
well, I feel like, well, DJing and that's electro type digital music actually transfers well via obviously online, the digital medium.
Yeah.
However,
exactly.
jazz, intimate music needs to be experienced in person, right? That soulful music,
Yeah.
you can't transfer that energy, that soul through, you know, the screen. It's hard to.
Totally. And it's not just jazz, like even folk music, most of it. Yeah, but you know, on the flip side of it, man, people were doing the best they could in a period where we were told not to go outside.
Yeah.
And so the effort to make it happen through live streaming was a laudable effort and an admirable effort. I just couldn't relate to it. You know, nothing more to say other than that, really.
Yeah. Well, just stepping out a bit on a larger picture, I guess, how has the pandemic, do you think the pandemic has drastically, I guess, forever changed the music industry? And have you seen any innovative solutions to the pandemic too, in performance, et cetera? Or has anybody came up with solutions that you've seen that has been interesting?
I think the pandemic was transformative in the sense that it accelerated, much to my dismay, frankly, that it accelerated the extent to which music has become visually absorbed. Meaning people spent more time on Instagram, more time on TikTok, and the conveyance of who a musician is and what they're about has become more about their social media and TikTok presence than about the actual music and lyrics of their songs. And I think that was happening anyway. But this was like, you know, it was like it's like when you pour salt and water on steel, it's like an accelerant to the rust.
Yeah.
And I think this was a rust accelerant, if you want to use it that way, if you want to think about it that way, to the erosion of music being something that is absorbed in a totally auditory way. And so by the way, I regret that. I think it's sad, but I think that happened. Number one. I do think, however, that some really cool things did happen. I mean, for example, a lot of artists will put out they'll play and they'll sing and they'll ask someone else to harmonize with them, and you'll see one face here and another face here, and some of that stuff is really cool. You know, John Mayer did it, and all kinds of people, you know, have done it. Jacob Collier does it all the time, and so the ability to virtually connect in a musical way, I actually think was augmented dramatically during this period, and that's cool. That's a real advancement, and it allows a person in the middle of Wyoming to connect with someone, you know, in Brooklyn, and that's a globalization of the creation of music, and that's cool. But I don't think that there's any technology that obviously people got better and better at production techniques and live stream. I have a friend named Richie who's a guitar player for Blue Oyster Cult, and he's like this master of live streamings now. It's one of the most unbelievable things. He has like so many things going on at once. The guy's like a genius. I don't know how he does it. And so like there have been advancements in that respect. But for sure, regrettably, I think music is becoming more and more, the discovery of music is becoming more and more about checking someone's TikTok page out than someone closing their eyes, lying down on the floor in their living room and searching for a new musical phenomenon that they can relate to or admire. And so that to me is like an unbelievable fucking tragedy, but it certainly isn't going to change. And I might as well join, you know, what's the old expression, join or die? Well, I'd rather join than die.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that kind of leads me into this question of like, in the age of the digital age and social media being so funneled and you just follow specific people of interest, how does one discover new music and new sounds? And whereas, you know, prior in the 90s where you go to a record store, right? Talk to the record
funny.
store guy, you know?
It's
or
funny.
person.
I had lunch with my music manager the other day, and he was telling me about some of his discussions with labels. And labels rely upon, or at least point out that, I guess, new music is discovered at an increasing rate through Instagram and TikTok. And that's how people are finding their artists that they love, not exclusively, but it was some gigantically increased number, like almost 40 or 50% of new Spotify streams are generated initially or catalyzed by a visitation to like a web, you know, a TikTok account or Instagram. So like, man, I have Instagram and I suppose I have TikTok somewhere. I don't even know how to get on my own fucking TikTok, but like, you know, I'm going to pay more attention to it. I guess I'll post on TikTok now. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a grown, it's going to be tough for me because I consider myself a grown man, but like, I guess I'm going to do it, you know, whatever. So, you know, that is how it's being discovered. I do, however, think that there will always be people. I see this from our fans, that there are people who simply absorb music through their ears and their mind, and for whom the visual ingestion of music is not, you know, their way of taking music in is not primarily visual. And so there's something about those types of fans that I would love to have more of, and I relate to them, and they seem always to like the same types of music that I like. And so wherever you are out there listening to this podcast, please listen to us. There's my big plug, by the way. I just got my money's worth out of the podcast. So but I'm just kidding. But like, so, you know, man, that's how music is being absorbed increasingly. And I suppose I will join that fray, but I still prefer to have, you know, if you called me up and say, hey, you know, I'm just listening to your music. I'm just listening to it. I'm not looking at your last Instagram post. I don't care what you had for lunch, and I don't need to see you dancing at a party or drinking a root beer on Instagram, or telling me how you need to be honest with yourself as a human being or some crap. Like, I'm actually just listening to your music and your lyrics, and they're cool, and they're creating a narrative in my own mind. I'm forever, and will always be forever, I suppose, in search of those types of fans.
Now, I actually noticed on a clip I was reviewing at when you guys performed Pay Studio, I think this last December, that you I think the guy asked you a question about releasing an album, but you stated yourself saying that you prefer to release singles, I guess. Is that the same case, or?
I mean, here's the thing. Yeah. Albums are amazing because they're like a holistic expression. You know, they're connected in theory, not always, but they're usually connected by some thematic thread, whether it's Adele's new album about her divorce, or the Red Hot Chili Peppers Californication, or Automatic for the People, REM, whatever, Royal Scam, the Steely Dan album, it's cool. Albums are cool in the sense that they have this thematic, this connective tissue between all the songs. But nowadays there are full-length albums released, but that's not how it's mostly done. People just release single after single. And there are, if I'm being kind of clinical about it, there are advantages to that because each single is a new distribution event. It's a new way to connect with fans and get people to listen. Whereas if you release an entire album, some of the songs are sort of buried underneath the tank that is the album. And so I'm open to both. I do think artistically the effort to create an integrated album is still sort of like the most heightened effort in some ways, but man, I'm not uptight about that. I'm just sort of releasing single after single. And we are actually releasing an EP now, so cool. There is some thematic thread to that. And but yeah, we're just releasing single after single. We have a big backlog of music that we created during the pandemic. So that's coming out, man.
Now, like with those though, with the singles, it's like, how do you guys as musicians get paid from? Is it through? I don't even want to say downloads anymore. It's just click and play.
Well,
listen.
Well, you get paid. I mean, you get paid in theory.
Yeah.
With a capital T. In theory, you get paid from the crumbs that flow down to you from Spotify and other streaming services. And by the way, that's not a knock against Spotify. Spotify has also democratized music and made it. It's an incredible distribution channel, actually. So I'm being a little bit glib, but I don't mean it in a critical way. So there's streaming revenue. There's revenue that you get from live performance, presuming that you're selling your venues out pretty well, which we're doing reasonably well. There's sync licensing and so on and so forth. So there's a variety of revenue streams. But if anybody's going into the music industry because they think they're going to hit it big, they need to see a psychiatrist or whatever.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. I was just curious, like, I actually kind of knew that already regarding like Spotify, Pandora, the trickle down pennies, whatever, via streaming, number, the equation of streams versus, et cetera. But
right.
Yeah, everything's digital, but just like, like for me, I still love a vinyl, in hand vinyl, where there's no ads injected into, like, if I'm listening to classical, then it's like I'm at peace, and then boom, advertising right.
Yeah, I mean, there's a when you listen to Spotify, there's a natural compression of the music, which homogenizes the sonic qualities of different songs.
Yeah,
and that's a technological reality, I think. And I'm no music engineer expert. My music engineer knows about that better than I, but I'm also not deaf. I can hear it. And so I guess that's a little bit of a shame when you listen to tape or vinyl, and you're in your living room listening to it. It's really cool and it's warmer. And it's, but I do think Spotify does a really good job of audio and if you put on a decent set of headphones and so on. But like, by the time the signal chain is done and terminates at your ear, it's been through so many sort of filters that I don't even know what to say about it. I mean, there's what it sounds like in the studio, and then there's what it sounds like on your iPhone, and then one wave file gets downloaded to this, and then that goes to Spotify, and then by the time Spotify goes to whatever converter you have on your iPhone or your computer or your studio monitors, there's so many layers of interference and filtration and conversion and technological interpretation of the signal that you're lucky you can hear fucking anything. Yeah. And I think Spotify and in general, all these systems do a pretty darn good job. And it's pretty cool. But the days of sort of like, obviously the Beatles all sitting in a room and recording in front of some mics and then doing that on a 4-track and then just putting it out there on radio or vinyl or whatever, like that ship has sailed, man.
Yeah, that is true. Do you have a set date for the EP or?
Yeah, man, we're releasing it the next. What day is today? Is it the 27th or 26th? What's today?
27th. Already.
Yeah, we're releasing it in 3 days, and so we're excited. It's 3 songs. One is called "Dealing," the other is called "What You're Gonna Do," and the other is called "Winter Soldier." And they are they're different songs, but if there's any thematic thread to this EP, it's sort of about New York and the decimation of New York and what it looked like and felt like during the sort of darkest moments of the pandemic,
And I guess actually, I think I did have more of like a futuristic kind of question regarding, I guess, or just like over a higher level question regarding, in other countries, particularly Europe, they the states and governments invest heavily into programs for artists to fully focus on the art and develop their art. Here, conversely, it's like, good luck, or here's some pennies, and everybody has to compete for like tiny grants and get for like $1,000. It's like, do you see an opportunity where finance can actually create programs specifically for artists, or musically, visual, etc., and create some innovation there to support artists? Because in our U.S. society, it seems like we love culture and art and music, but we don't invest in developing full-time artists. We're like, that's a hobby,
I mean, yeah, no, I know what you mean. It's such a complex discussion because on the one hand, no, per capita, our grants to artists may not be as plentiful or as big a number. Plentiful is the wrong word. Big a number per capita, per person.
Yeah.
As other countries. But the standard of living in the United States in some ways is better than in many other countries where the buying power of the dollar allows one to produce art and get access to art in a way that other countries don't. For example, one of the businesses that I'm very involved with is a very cool streaming service called AudioMac. And me and some partners and a great management team helped to build that business up from a few 100,000 users to 30 million users. And it's a hip hop streaming service. And the thing is if you go to other countries around the world, not France and Italy, but I'm saying Nigeria or whatever, what you'll see is that there isn't even access to art. Because there isn't the technological modalities to even access art don't even exist.
Yeah.
Not everybody has a phone walking down the street in the United States. Well, that's not fair. Not everybody, but most people do.
Yeah.
And so that phone is a window into all kinds of art if the person wants it to be. And because of that phone, there's crowdfundings and GoFundMe's and so on. So on the one hand, I think it's fair to be critical that there aren't federal allocations to art. On the other hand, the open architecture of our society and its innovations has opened doors to access art in a way that no other nation has. So it's such a complex. And I do think there's like a fair public policy question, like, does art deserve federal grants when you have kids that can't even add and subtract and need to get educated?
Yeah.
And that's a bigger problem. And where do you prioritize these things? So like, listen, I'm no politician, nor am I allocating federal funds, which is a good thing because I would allocate them all to my band, That's a joke. Before I get canceled, I just want to say that's a joke.
Yeah.
So I'm no expert, but I do know that it's complex and that there are good arguments to be right where we are, and certainly good arguments on the side of what you were saying, you know.
But I know, reflecting back on your own words, it seems like the U.S. You know, maybe we have smaller amounts of grant opportunities on the federal side, but it seems like we have plenty of opportunities to be entrepreneurs as artists and develop our own markets and resources. I mean, everybody here, yeah, like most people have, you know, a computer, a phone, you know, and like you said, and like there's lots of countries that people don't even have internet access, you know, so it's like
just the phone alone,
yeah,
just the iPhone alone. With your iPhone, you can go to the App Store and literally download a decent drum machine. You don't need to get fancy and go to software and Arturia and Pro Tools and whatever. Like, you can actually take your iPhone and get a decent little drum machine on your iPhone. And given how widely profused the iPhone is throughout our civilization here in the United States, right there, that's just a microcosmic example of the actually the open doorways to creating art. You know, just on your iPhone, you can go and get VideoLeap software or the app VideoLeap and PhotoLeap and PixArt and all those things. And these are like these incredibly, you know, for either free or very little money, you can go and get these unbelievable sort of iterations of Photoshop.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is something I'm sure you're familiar. My wife's a photographer, by the way. That's the only reason I even mentioned Photoshop. I can't do Photoshop worth shit, and I'm the worst photographer in the world. But my wife's actually becoming a very well-known artist, and so I've been exposed to Photoshop by virtue of that to some extent. But so like the accoutrement associated with a reasonably decent standard of living in some respects in the United States, and I say in some respects before people jump all over me and say, no, we have a terrible standard of living. You have to be very careful what you say. That is an unbelievable doorway into creation. I think we should never forget that.
Interesting. Oh, that's a good point though, because like, yeah, you know, like people forget, you know, to look globally and then kind of compare what they have here in the States.
Yeah, I mean, like sometimes we don't even like we have clean municipal water in most cities, like not in India, you know, not in parts of Nigeria and Kenya. So like we have to be careful to always appreciate the infrastructure that is around us at some level.
Now, going back to your project, Gideon King in the City Blog, I guess futuristically, where would you envision you guys growing and your music growing to? Like, what say 5 years? Where do you see you guys?
Man, if you ask me, I mean, it's not very nice, but I'm sort of rephrasing your question in a way. So, you know, pardon me. But I guess what I would say is, if you ask me where I'd like to be in 2, 3, 4, 5 years, call it 4 years. I don't know why, but just call it 4 years. I'd like the catalog of good songs that we write to expand. I would like more people to listen to the music. I would like us to be able to consistently pack mid-sized venues. And I would like us to be known as hardworking, competent songwriters who care a lot about everything they produce, and to have a substantial boutique following, which we're developing. I certainly don't expect to be the next Ariana Grande. Just take a look at me, and you know that ship has sailed. So like, you know, that's like kind of like, you know, checkmate against me on that one. But I would hope to continue to grow and have fun with it and be recognized, and, you know, spend the days with nice people making good music and having a lot of people listening to it spend days doing that before I kick the bucket, man.
Yeah. Let's have like a musical record of
Yeah.
yourself.
I mean, the thing I would say to you is, if I was to be critical of some of folks who call themselves musical artists, they are musical artists, but many that call themselves musical have only really produced a few songs. And I don't want that. I want us to have literally, I mean, we have, we must have 40 or 35 to 60 songs out. And so I want us to have 120 songs out. And I want people to, a real music fan, I want you to be able to take your earphones off, lie on your couch, and go through our catalog for hours and hours and hours.
Yeah.
And that would be my ultimate goal, so that we really created a footprint of our music, like Loch Ness Monster footprint of music. And that's the goal. I don't have any specific goals to become wildly this or wildly that, because it's like that old expression, man plans and God laughs. So, the bigger plans you make, the bigger the surprises. Just keep going forward, and making music, and hopefully that's enough. If it's not, then fuck it. It wasn't enough.
Actually, just one more minute question on that. And this is actually a problem, or just a question I've been facing myself with everything digital. And like, how do I store my archives, or how do I maintain my archives, of like my work? And same thing.
Well,
it's all digital recordings, and if say you can constantly back up the server, but how much, how long can you do that for, and
well, it's funny you say that. It's like it's funny, it's like everything is becoming externalized. The dollar is externalized. Right now we're getting fiat currencies. You store your pictures in the iCloud. Someone else is storing all your shit.
Yeah.
And so we are once, twice, three times removed from that which we create. And so I've accepted that everything that I do or produce or create, and everything that you do, produce or create, including this podcast, which, by the way, I appreciate you having me on, but is externalized and saved on it's almost like saving something on an actual hard drive. It's becoming like it's beginning to feel outdated.
Yeah.
So I've accepted that it's just like, we will ask for permission for more real estate in the digital sphere. Every time our Dropbox file is too full, we'll pay an extra $6 or $9 a month or whatever the hell it is. And we will ask permission to store our shit in someone else's world. And let's hope that world isn't attacked, destroyed, stolen, whatever. And that's just like, I've given up. Like that's why like physical things are nice. Like your shoes are nice. Yeah. It's nice to have a physical guitar. It's nice to store a can of soup in your refrigerator, because it's actually there with you. Yeah. And more and more, everything that we are and that we own is being somehow is stored or accounted for on some tertiary fucking planet that we have nothing to do with. But certainly I'm not fighting against it, because it's just the way it is. But it's totally weird and totally bizarre.
Yeah. No, it's like, I've always that's the challenge I've been facing. I have my original SD cards,
Yeah, right.
and then I have, one external tower, and then I have another external tower where I just back up, unplug, so they're not connected to any, electricity, just in case things go down. They're just separate entities. But then I'm like, do I still back up to a cloud service? I'm like, this, how far can I just keep on replicating? Right.
Well, what's nuts? It's like, when I think of where my songs are truly stored, I think of Spotify.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like I can't even, when I look back on our Dropbox files, it's like our music engineer knows where it all is, but like I can't even find like the final version of anything. The
Yeah.
only way I know anything's the final version of anything is if I look on Spotify, because there's all the edited versions. And it's just funny to go on a service
Yeah.
to actually see the, you don't go on a service to see what your house looks like. You know what I mean? Your house is right there, but like for these things that are so important to you that you create, you literally go on a service to see, you go to someone else's house to see what you own.
Yeah.
It's totally weird. It's like another world,
And then what happens, in like 20 years, Spotify may not be around. Who knows? Then what, it's interesting questions actually on that note. But on that note, I'll end this conversation here, Gideon. But if you can just hang around after I hit stop record for a sec.
Cool.
But anything excited about, you just want to plug right now? Of course, the EP coming out in a few days, right? You said 3 days?
Yeah. Just go on. All I would ask is anyone listening to the podcast or watching the podcast, I guess, is, man, if you have the time, please check out our stuff. We're releasing a song and an EP called Dealing Us. Well, the EP is actually called What You're Gonna Do, but putting all that crap aside, just go to our Spotify Gideon King City Blog channel and check our music out. If you like it, then listen some more. And if you like it a lot, listen again. So that's all I can ask. And any listenership is appreciated. So that leaves me where we are.
And for the people in the city, where can we generally find you in
we
performing
play
live? Yeah.
We'll play at Joe's Pub. We'll play at City Winery. We'll play at all the clubs in the city. Some Blue Note. We'll play at our show at Joe's Pub on February 3rd. Man, it was going to be sold out, but it was canceled because of COVID stuff. So That's a bummer. But that's been rescheduled to July. But we have a gig. We have a gig, I think, in Brooklyn on February 1st. We're all over the place. If we have a mailing list, and I'll put you on the mailing list, and there's lots of people on that mailing list. So it's the shows are fun, great musicians. So if you come out, we'd appreciate it.
Cool. Gideon King, thank you so much for your time and conversation. And this ends the recording.
Thanks. Appreciate it so much.